House Republicans are looking to fund a widely unpopular war with Iran by cutting Americans' healthcare. Because Americans just have too much healthcare to begin with. So we can give some of it up, right? Yeah, okay, tens of millions of Americans don't even have healthcare in this country. More and more people find themselves in poverty in America each year. But we're going to go ahead and cut money that benefits the American people in order to send $200 billion to fight a war against Iran on behalf of a foreign country, Israel. So do you get what I mean when I say that our government has been occupied by Israel? That's what I mean. It's obvious, it's clear. Any other country doing this, if we got dragged into a war on behalf of, I don't know, let me just, Kazakhstan. Okay, Kazakhstan convinced the United States to fight a war that doesn't benefit us, but they really want. Everyone would be in unison condemning it, right? But with Israel, it's different. All of a sudden, like, no, it's totally okay for us to give up blood and treasure for a country that spies on us and thinks that American lives are expendable. Okay, all right. Anyway, per a source from Axios, and a report from Axios, they claim that House Republicans are going to cut from federal healthcare programs, which they've already done to the tune of $1 trillion, by the way, to cover what's expected to be a $200 billion funding request from the Pentagon. And the GOP is also rolling out their old talking points from last year because, God forbid, they try to make cogent arguments that are at least a little more convincing. So here's what they say. There's other items we're looking at right now, especially in the areas of fraud and waste and abuse. You mean the Pentagon, which hasn't passed a single audit? Is that what you're talking about? No, that's not what he's talking about. That we're working through with our members. Okay. So is there waste, fraud, and abuse in federal healthcare? Yeah, of course there is. Does it amount to $200 billion? Unlikely, and more importantly, what usually happens with these arguments that Republicans make is they'll just use waste, fraud, and abuse as an excuse to cut healthcare funding, period, without actually providing evidence that, hey, this is how much waste, fraud, and abuse there is. Okay, here's the evidence. And as a result, we want to save money by not spending as much. But that's not what's happening here. They just claim there's waste, fraud, and abuse. There's waste, fraud, and abuse. We're gonna cut $200 billion, probably more. Let's see how much they actually end up cutting. And we're gonna send $200 billion to the Pentagon to fight an illegal war on behalf of Israel. Even if you're like one of those anarcho-capitalist types, right? And you don't think the government should be involved at all in helping Americans with healthcare. Sorry, you live in a system where we pay taxes, and those taxes are supposed to benefit the American people. That's a system we live under. So under that system, you tell me what's better, taking care of fellow Americans who are in poverty and can't afford their own private health insurance, or should we send that money over to fight a war on behalf of Israel against Iran, which is a, pretty significant military power we're now finding, and predicted, by the way, before the war started. Those cuts, by the way, would be made through a process known as reconciliation. What is that? What is reconciliation? Well, reconciliation is a way of passing bills in the Senate where you wouldn't need 60 votes in order to pass the bill. You can do it, in this case, with just 50 Republicans, 50 Republican senators out of 100 voting to cut benefits for Americans to send money to the Pentagon to fight this war on behalf of Israel against Iran. Okay, and the way that you can do reconciliation is if you find other areas of the budget to cut. Now, if you don't do that, you would need to basically find the 60 votes in the Senate to pass the bill otherwise. And they don't have the 60 votes. So they're gonna try to do this through the reconciliation process. Now, according to Axios, one proposal involves changing how cost sharing reductions work. So cost sharing reductions apply to silver healthcare plans, so they can be used to reduce your deductible, your co-payments, and even some of your out-of-pocket costs. So the Affordable Care Act requires insurers to offer plans with reduced patient cost sharing to marketplace enrollees with incomes between 100 and 250% of the poverty level. So the government used to compensate insurers for those cost sharing plans, and that's no longer the case. But insurers are still required to have them, right? So in response, most insurers decided we're gonna raise silver premium substantially to compensate for the loss of CSR payments. And so that is what is known as silver loading, okay, which sounds fun. But it's not, okay, so from 2017 to 2018, average benchmark silver plan premiums rose by about 17 percentage points more than bronze premiums did. So Congress did that to you, okay? If you're on one of these silver plans, Congress did that to you, okay? Under Trump, per the Congressional Budget Office, that practice results in a larger premium tax credit under current law because the credit is tied to the second lowest cost silver plan. Reportedly, Republicans are weighing the idea of reviving the federal government's payments to insurers to offset the impact of cost sharing, thereby lowering the premiums for silver plans, which sounds like a good idea. But simultaneously, this is the important part, Republicans would limit cost sharing to plans that do not cover abortion services except when necessary to save the mother's life or in cases of rape or incest. And according to the Congressional Budget Office, the move would lower overall benchmark ACA premiums by 11%, but result in 300,000 more uninsured people. So look, I gotta say, like, this is a little more of a clever way of hiding the fact that you're making healthcare even less attainable for Americans. But it would cut the subsidy amount that some enrollees receive, thereby increasing out-of-pocket premium costs while saving the government over $30 billion. But wait a minute, that's only $30 billion. Where else are they gonna get the cuts? What else are they gonna cut to make up for the $200 billion Republicans in Congress wanna send over to the Pentagon, which hasn't passed a single audit, in order to fund this illegal war against Iran that we are fighting on behalf of Israel? They're not sending a single member of the IDF to fight it, by the way, as Trump is amassing ground troops to invade Iran right now, Karg Island very likely. IDF, they're not gonna be there. We're gonna have to fight that on our own, even though we get no benefit from going to war with Iran. Okay, great. So remember, the subsidy is tied to the price of the silver plans, right? So if the price of the silver plans were to fall, the tax credit would be reduced as well. So Axios reports that changes like those could spook moderate Republicans. No, it won't. It's not gonna spook moderate Republicans, okay? They're all gonna fall in line like good boys and girls. And it's worth noting that these changes aren't just for funding the Iran war. Republicans are also hoping to fund ICE at a time when the Democrats are holding strong to refusing a funding bill for DHS. They want some concessions from Republicans when it comes to the behavior of ICE as they are, heavily armed and roaming our streets. They should identify themselves, for instance. I'm sorry, you signed up to be an ICE official or an ICE agent, and whining about how you're scared of the people that you're supposed to be serving is ridiculous to me, but okay. Remember, we pay your salaries. We, the American people, pay your salaries. The notion that they should be masked up and they shouldn't identify themselves is insane, okay? And so Democrats are still refusing to fund DHS and pass that funding bill. So as a result, Republicans are like, we need to find some funding for ICE. I thought you guys already had a ton of funding for ICE. The people who aren't getting paid right now are TSA agents. You guys secured $75 billion for ICE. Last week, the Senate passed a bill to fund DHS that does not fund ICE or the Border Patrol agents. Hardline Republicans in the House are currently slamming that deal. Only time will tell, though, if they do end up passing the bill in the House. But if it does, then Republicans want another way to, but if it doesn't, Republicans want a different way of funding ICE. And ironically, this morning, Secretary of State Marco Rubio accused Iran of spending money on war rather than on their own citizens. Take a look at that.
At the end of the day, I think that if there are people in Iran who now, given everything that's happened, are willing to move in a different direction for their country, that would be great. Imagine in Iran that instead of spending their wealth, billions of dollars supporting terrorists or weapons, had spent that money helping the people of Iran, you'd have a much different country. So we are always hopeful that that would exist over there. It's unfortunate. The people of Iran are incredible people. The people who lead them, this clerical regime, that is the problem.
Trump asked for $1.5 trillion for the military budget. $1.5 trillion. How about you shut the F up? Okay, if I were in Iran's shoes, knowing that the survival of my country is on the line. The Israelis have been wanting to balkanize Iran for a long time. They want to do to Iran what they did to Syria, okay? Yeah, you're gonna do whatever it takes to defend yourself. The audacity of Marco Rubio to take pot shots at Iran for spending money on their military when we, the United States of America, throw the American people in the trash on a regular basis to funnel more money to the Pentagon that hasn't passed a single freaking audit? The fact that your president, Marco Rubio, the guy you're working for, your boss, asked for $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. It is amazing. Meanwhile, as Congress prepares to slash healthcare funding for to fund the war, House Republicans are allegedly running for the hills. Let's take a look at that.
So far this cycle, already 36. That is the grand record over the last nearly 100 years. My goodness gracious. That actually beats the former record in total, which was 34 back in the 2018 cycle. And that wasn't that long ago. And I do recall that was a very, very good year for House Democrats. The bottom line is this: you don't run for the exits unless you know trouble is brewing. And House Republicans so far believe trouble is absolutely brewing.
Oh, it's definitely brewing. Despite what my left-leaning detractors have to say, Republican politicians, power brokers, the people who actually have positions of power are garbage. They are, okay? And I've never held back from saying that. But I believe in the American people, including conservatives. And conservative voters are pretty furious with what's going on right now. I mean, I know CNN put out that poll where they're like, 100% of MAGA totally supports what Trump is doing in Iran. What is this, North Korea? Okay, that poll is not a credible poll. Okay, whenever you have 100% response in favor of something in a poll, it's not a credible poll. Obviously, their sample went after individuals who identify first and foremost, their whole identity is I support Trump. Yeah, they're gonna go ahead and support what Trump is doing no matter what. But when you look at the whole of the conservative or Republican electorate, yeah, it is fractured right now because of this war against Iran. For good reason. And so you have to make that distinction, right? The politicians are different from the voters. Save your ire for the politicians. Now let's watch Enton explain what sort of trouble he's referring to.
Some elected officials aren't so smart, but many of them are. And they're looking at the same numbers we're looking at. And what they're looking at is the president of the United States and his approval rating. So why don't we just take a look here? Why are GOP retiring? Okay, when the president's approval is less than 50%, I went back all the way through the record books, all the way back since 1938 in midterm elections. When the Press Party in the House, on average, loses 34 seats. Loses 34 seats when the president's approval rating is less than 50%. Donald Trump isn't anywhere close to 50%. He's at 40%. The average, the House for the president's party, they lose 34 seats. The least was just 9. That was actually Joe Biden back in 2022.
Yeah, Republicans are in a lot of trouble. And today, interestingly enough, on Piers Morgan's show, he had a guest who basically just confessed, yeah, Trump's pretty much given up on the midterms. He knows Republicans are gonna lose. No biggie. Great democracy we're living in. Now, Craig Berland, who's the chair of the Maricopa County, Arizona Republican Party, told Politico that ever since this war against Iran was launched by Trump, Republican voters have seemed to be pretty unhappy Let me give you his quotes. He says, "We're even going around canvassing neighborhoods and registered Republicans are yelling out the door, 'Go away,' or 'I'm calling the police.' I find that very discouraging." Well, you should be discouraged. The Republican Party deserves it. But honestly, the whole of our government deserves our ire right now. Because where is Democratic leadership? Why is it that the loudest voices against this war happen to be people like Marjorie Taylor Greene? That is insane. And I don't think that's insane because it's like, oh wow, it's shocking that Marjorie Taylor Greene would be against this war. It's shocking because Democrats should be a lot louder, a lot more aggressive in fighting back, not just against this war, but also against sending endless amounts of money to a genocidal country that is now invading Lebanon and openly announcing that they're going to essentially annex the southern part of Lebanon for themselves, 15% of the land. But anyway, getting back to this story, voters' frustrations, Berlin said, stem from the war or the economy, and the economy is defined largely by energy prices. Sure is, Berlin, sure is. So that's where the voters are at, and I'm here for it because it's about time that people wake up and realize that we're always constantly stuck with one of two terrible options. And unless we start holding our preferred parties accountable for their dog crap behavior and lack of leadership, nothing's gonna change in this country. It's that simple.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.